My name is Katie Johnson, and this is my first presentation. So first off, we have the pine flatwoods. These are my landscape pictures. And now to start off with pine flatwoods plants and other non-animal organisms. So we have Rexia aliphanus, which is the savanna meadow beauty. It attracts butterflies and bees as pollinators through its bright colored petals. It can be found alongside carnivorous plants as they have similar environmental requirements, and the urn-shaped capsules are commonly used in floral arrangements. This is some more pictures and an identifying picture. Next up, we have Plukia foetida, which is stinking camphor weed. True to its name, when crushed, the foliage exudes a strong scent. And this species in particular has a stronger scent than the rest of the other species in that genus. They're perennials that flower summer into fall, and the identifying feature for me with these ones was the florets are creamy white rather than a more pinkish color. This is another picture of them. This is Irocalune decangulare, which is the bog button. They're a wetland indicator species because their wetland indicator status is obligate, so they have to grow in wetlands. Next up is a Drosera species, which is a sundew. I believe that this one is Drosera intermedia, which is a state-threatened species, and the identifying feature on this species is the L-shaped flowering scape, which is basically the stem that the flower comes off of. So you can see that flower in the picture here, and you can see that it kind of runs laterally against the ground and then springs up, giving it that L shape, and that's a distinguishing feature from the other species. And like I said, this is a state-threatened species. It's a carnivorous plant, and it uses that sticky sap that you can see there to trap insects to eat. These are some more pictures of it. It looks super cool. Another identifying feature is that the leaflets kind of grow up off of the ground as opposed to laterally. Next up is Rexia petulata, which is fringed meadow beauty. The identifying feature here is that the urns are smooth without hairs as opposed to the Rexia species that we saw earlier. These flowers bloom during the summer, and they attract bees and butterflies as pollinators. Here's some pictures where we can see the urns. Next up is Xyris carolinata, which is Carolina yellow-eyed grass. This was, as a fun fact, this was used as by Native Americans in a tea to aid with diarrhea. The fruit is a capsule, and it's pollinated by wind and bees. It's the only Xyris species in Florida with a white flower. All the other species that we have in Florida have a yellow flower. So that's a distinguishing species or a distinguishing trait for this species. Next up is Pinus palustris, which is a longleaf pine. Some facts about these guys is that the young trees remain in a grass stage for 3 to 7 years. In this stage, they're resistant to fire, and they're able to focus all of their growth on underground biomass accumulation and growing their taproot. Another fun fact is that masting of cones occurs approximately every 7 to 10 years, which prevents predation of all cones. Next is Serenoa repens, which is saw palmetto. The berries are often harvested illegally and used as an herbal supplement for men's prostate. And berries are an important food source for the Florida black bear. Hypericum tetrapetalum is 4-petal St. John's wort. Fun fact about these guys is that they're nearly endemic, which means they're almost only found in Florida, but there's a little bit of distribution in Georgia as well, and they flower throughout the year. Next up is Ilex glabra, which is gallberry. It's an evergreen shrub, and it's very ecologically important in the way that it attracts bees, and its fruits are eaten by birds. This is vanilla leaf, which is Carphephorus odoratissimus. Okay. The identifying feature with these guys was the reddish stems, which kind of differentiates them from Florida paintbrush. And the fruit is an akene, which is a dry, indehiscent fruit. Next up, we have tall elephant's foot, Elephantopus alatus. Again, in these guys, the fruit is an akene, and it attracts many pollinators, specifically bees. It also has cytotoxic properties, and the chemicals that produce or that make it toxic are elephantin and elephantopin. Next up for plants, we have Sebacia brevifolia, which is white Sebacia. It's mainly pollinated by bees. It rarely blooms in the winter. That's not its blooming season, but it will as a result of high temperatures. And the fruits are capsules containing many seeds. This is a Mycena species, which is a gilded mushroom. There's many different species of these all over the United States, so I was unable to narrow it down to a species name because a lot of the identifying features are microscopic, but smell can also be helpful. I just didn't know that at the time, so I didn't smell it. And a fun fact about these guys is they may grow in clusters on decaying matter, so that's pretty standard for mushrooms. All right, moving on to animals. We have Argycope aurantia, which is the black and yellow garden spider. This species experiences sexual dimorphism, which means that the females are significantly larger than the males. We have another spider. This is Mangora placidia, which is the tuft-legged orb weaver. A fun fact about these guys is the webs are laced closer together with silk than other spiders, and this allows smaller prey as well as larger prey to be caught. And the tufts on its legs help it to move around its web without ruining the delicate construction, and they're actually venomous. This is Dantana ministra, which is the yellow-necked caterpillar, and this is obviously in a caterpillar form. The bright orange and yellow coloration behind the head give it its namesake, and in its defense, the caterpillar will lift its head and tail. I'm sure some of you guys probably remember this when we were out in the pine flatlands and there was all those caterpillars and they were kind of lifting up in a weird way. That's why they were doing it in defense. And this caterpillar gives rise to the yellow-necked caterpillar moth. This is Dichromorpha viridis, which is the green slant-faced grasshopper. And this guy feeds on grasses. This is Stagmomentis floridensis, which is the larger Florida mantis. One of the identifying features of these mantises is that they have a stigmatic patch, that they don't have a stigmatic patch. It's based on the stigmatic patch. This species does not have it, and one of the similar species does. Or in this species, it's just very faint or not as discriminate. And this is a predatory insect that eats other insects. It's often referred to as a good pest remover for that reason. This is an extra little fun clip. I took this video through a spotting scope at Hal Scott, so that's where we went out to the Pine Flatwoods. And this is a red cockaded woodpecker. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. Okay. So moving on to the scrub. These are some of my landscape pictures for scrub. Got some rosemary scrub there. All right, so starting off with scrub, plants, lichens, and others. We have Pinus clausa, which is the sand pine. Many individuals have serotinous cones, which makes them fire dependent for dispersal of their seeds. So for that reason, they're adapted to fire using a regeneration strategy, but they often burn very hot, and fires result in stand replacement. All right, next is Quercus geminata, which is sand live oak. This species is salt and drought tolerant. And here's some more pictures of it. One of the identifying features is that the leaves very significantly wrap under each other, or wrap under the inside. This is Cladonia evansi, which is deer moss. This species doesn't have roots. It absorbs water and mineral nutrients from the air. And next up, we have Cladonia laporia, which is cup lichen. I think that's actually a broader name. I know it's referred to as soldier lichen or British soldier lichen as well. So that's that guy. They have the very distinctive red tips that kind of make it a pretty easy ID. Next we have Optunita humifusa, which is prickly pear cactus. Like most cactuses, they have a photosynthetic stem that acts as a leaf. So they don't actually have leaves. Those kind of paddle-shaped expenditures are actually stems that are just really fleshy and wide and photosynthesized for the plant. Like I said, they have a swollen stem that helps to store water, adapting these plants well to dry and well-drained environments, like the scrub. This prairie clover is the host of this butterfly's larvae. This is Rhus copalinum. It's deciduous. It produces drupes as a fruit, and it's winged sumac, sorry. This is Elax opaca, which is scrub holly. The fruit ripens in the fall and are very showy when ripe, so it has that characteristic holly look with the small, round, bright red fruits. And those fruits are an important source food source to wildlife, including birds. One of the distinctive features of these guys is the very pointed leaves that kind of look almost like a Christmas tree. This is Quercus myrtifolia, which is myrtle oak. It's an evergreen, and the fruits are utilized by Florida scrub jays and squirrels. And in that same vein, they produce acorns as a fruit that scrub jays can cache for winter food sources, and that's a dry. This is Lionia ferruginea, sorry. And it's referred to as rusty Lionia. The leaves, stem, and trunk are covered in a rust-colored pubescence. So that's what gives it that rusty color, is actually little hairs on the plant that are just rust-colored. The flowers are attractive to butterflies and bees, and the fruit is a capsule that is used as a food source. Here's a closer look at that. All right, this is Serratiola ericoins, which is Florida rosemary. These plants are extremely drought tolerant, characterizing the driest ecosystem. So it's said that the driest scrub will have rosemary. Rosemary produces chemicals that causes any plant or other organism growing around it to suffer, which is called allelopathy. All right, I'm gonna have to speed it up a little. Galactica pershii is Persh's milk pea. They have little stem vestiture, which is one of their characterizing features, and they're confined to the Florida Peninsula. They're scrub animals. This is Urbanus proteus, which is the long-tailed skipper. Their larval structures are made by folding leaves over and sealing them with silk, and they're migratory, and they move south for the winter. This is Nemodophorus sexlineatus, which is the six-lined race runner. They lay eggs in 2 clutches of 1 to 6, and the juveniles have a bright blue tail that can be confused for a skink sometimes. And they're the only native teid to Florida. All right, this is a Pheliocoma couriolsens, which is the Florida scrub jay. These guys are cooperative breeders, and they're federally and state threatened. This is a really cool video that I got. This is a video that captures a female making what's called a hiccuping sound, and only females make this sound, so it's a good way to differentiate between the sexes in the field.
She's a little girl. Little girl.
All right, in the interest of time. And we'll move on. This is Piplio erythrothalmus, which is the eastern towhee. And here's its call. Here we have Shillindia vitiker, which is the cactus coriid. They feed on prickly pear cactus, and they're being researched as a biocontrol candidate for that reason. This is Anisomorpha burestoides, which is the southern two-striped walking stick. They also experience sexual dimorphism. As you can see, the female is much, much larger than the male, and occasionally, well, often actually, the male will be riding on the female's back. And here we have music hammock. Here's some of the landscape photos. And these are our plants. We have Elephantopus carolinianus, which is Carolina elephant's foot. Blooming occurs over the course of a month, and individual flowers last only 1 day. The Gelsemium sempervirens is Carolina jessamine. This one's not blooming right now, but when they do, they have vibrant yellow flowers that bloom February to May. This is Viteria lineata, which is shoestring fern. It's very distinctive because of the very thin fronds. They reside mostly on the trunks of sable palms, and they have very inconspicuous sori as compared to a lot of ferns. This is Ardisia crenata, which is coral ardisia. Unfortunately, this is a Category 1 invasive that can reach densities of up to 100 plants per square meter. And it is an invasive partially because it shades out native seedlings by decreasing light in the understory. This is a closer look at it, but it does have a cool leaf with the scalloped edges. This is Telenzia floridana, which is Bartram's air plant. The identifying feature on this guy is the large inflorescence that's about 15 centimeters. It's epiphytic epiphytic, but not parasitic. So this plant is photosynthesizing for itself and getting all of its own water and nutrients and necessary materials, but it's just living on top of other plants. And like I said, it absorbs needed water and nutrients from the air. This is Smilax tamnoides, which is bristly greenbrier. The identifying feature on this was the black needle-like spines. They're hard to see in this picture, but when I zoom in and in the next few pictures, you can see that the spines are very needle-like, and they can replicate using rhizomes or self-seeding. On the picture on the right, you can specifically see the black and dark brown needles that make this a bristly greenbrier, as opposed to another species. This is Phlebodium aureum, which is golden polypody. It uses wind dispersal to move its spores. This is Vidus roundifolia, which is muscadine. This is a deciduous vine. This is Pleopeltis polypodioids, which is resurrection fern. As we learned in class, this fern can lose up to 97% of its water in an extreme drought without dying. And it is an epiphytic plant. As you can see, it resides on this live oak here in this picture. This is Quercus virginiana, which is live oak. In these plants, the acorn matures after one full growing season. So it takes a full growing season for the acorns to mature. Here we have liquid ambar styraciflua, which is American sweet gum. This is actually an ecosystem indicator plant. It does not tolerate pollution. This is Chasmanthium sessiflorum, which is longleaf wood oats. Wildlife consumes the seeds, making them ecologically important, especially for birds. This is Smilax auriculata, which is earleaf greenbrier. They're dioecious, which means that there's a male and female plant. And one of the identifying features of these guys is that they have vasculature really close to the outside of the leaf, which gives it a ridge right on the outside of the leaf. Here's our mesocamic animals, which include Trigonopeltastes delta, which is the delta flower beetle. Their eggs are only a few millimeters long, so they're super tiny. Here is the green June beetle, which is Cotinus nitida. The females lay eggs in late summer, and they preferred sandy soils with higher. This is Odocoileus virginianus, which is a white-tailed deer, and this is some scat. White-tailed deer are considered generalists, which allows them to thrive in many ecosystems, including changing anthropogenically run ecosystems. And their scat is numerous, round, kind of rabbit-like. And though they are herbivores, their scat doesn't really reflect that too much. This is Sus scofra, which is wild boar. These are some tracks, but wild boar themselves live in social groups called sounders, and they're an invasive species in Florida, unfortunately, mostly due to the rutting that they do in order to search for food, which tears up native plants and native ground cover. This is Pantherophis gutatus, which is a corn snake. This is a juvenile, and they have a more brownish coloration rather than reddish, or they can. They're non-venomous and docile, as you can see, and they're preferred prey item of the state-threatened eastern indigo snake. So they're really important for bolstering those populations. Is a picture? This is Stryophoros ludovicanus, which is the Carolina wren. They have actually been seen to eat snakes on occasion.
There's the rattling.
And I have a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Carolina wren. People say it's sorry, northern. Thank you. A northern water thrush, sir. There's a couple kinds that are difficult to tell apart, but oh, he's close.
And that is all. Here's my works cited. And thank you for watching.